questions. I want to thank you all for your time. I will do quick identification of individuals who are leading the charge in the pilot grants. I'm Ray Panittieri. I'm the program director for the New Jersey Alliance for Clinical and Translational Science. And our website is there, lots of information on the website. We have now just entered our 6th year. We've been renewed for 7 more years. And this is an alliance with partners not only of Rutgers, but Princeton University, NJIT, and Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health. On the call is the one of the co-leads, Arnold Rabson. We also have Joe Yeager, and we have Grace Wang on. So Arnold, you want to just do a quick introduction, and then I'll invite the others who are on. Arnold?
I'm getting there. Okay, thanks. So I'm Arnold Rabson. As Ray said, one of the co-leads and for the pilots program, and 2 of our other 4 co-leads have also joined us here, and you'll hear from them in a moment. And I'm the director of the Child Health Institute of New Jersey. So welcome, everyone.
Great. All right, Grace Wang.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Grace. I'm the Distinguished Professor of Computer Science from New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm also the Associate Dean for Research of Inwood College of Computing and the founding director of the AI Center for Research at NJIT. Nice to meet you all.
Great. And from Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health, it's Joe Yeager. Dr. Yeager.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joe Yeager. And by training, I'm an epidemiologist, and I am the AVP for research for the Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health System. And I know, as Ray put it succinctly before, we're sort of the new players in the playground. So we're happy to be here. And please feel free to ask any questions you'd like, and we'll do the best we can to work with you. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Great, great. And from Princeton, I do not believe Sam is on, but Bianca, you're on representing Princeton. Want to say hello?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Bianca Frieda here, and welcome to our webinar on pilots representing Princeton today. Thanks.
All right, everyone. So again, I am thrilled to announce that we were re-upped for 7 years. And the pilot program is one of our most productive and exciting cores. There is a change in some direction, but I want to give you an overview of NJX. So with that, when we talk about translational research, it's really a continuum. It's a continuum from things that we call T0 through T4. That is translational research. Now, this particular set of pilots is transitioning from translational research to science, and we'll come back to that in a moment. If we think about using sort of the parlance of pharma, we could understand basic science is T0, that's things at the bench, that's discovery. Going into humans is also considered phase 1 clinical trials, proof of safety. T2 is phase 2 and 3 clinical trials, proof of concept. T3 is translation to practice, typically phase 4 studies. That's proof of efficacy. And then T4 is where Joe Yeager in the health system lives, and that's translation to community, somewhere between T3 and T4, where we look at improvement in population-based outcomes, proof of acceptance. Now, overlying this is sort of the concept of commercialization of academic assets. But you can understand in this continuum, we embrace everything that translates from a petri dish to a patient to a community and bidirectionally. Now, the New Jersey Alliance for Clinical and Translational Science really touches every aspect of our institutions. We can see community partners, our health system up here, as well as clinical institutions with Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, the Barnabas Systems, Princeton with specific departments that are engaged, and all of the research institutes, frankly, not only at Rutgers, but also at NJIT. That is the Rutgers Institute for Translational Medicine and Science, is the administrative home. We also interface with many community partners. We have a short list of about 30 community-based organizations that we interface with, but all told, we have an enormous group of faculty, about 200 that are involved. Now, the program itself is shown here. I am the director, but we have deputy directors as well as a health system liaison. Shauna Hudson is an associate director. Mark Einstein's transitioning. He's leaving, going to school in Manhattan. But Dan Notterman and Tom Dewan are our deputy directors who serve as boots on the ground for our alliance members. The organization of NJX is now organized according to elements, element B, C, D, and E. Not going to go into a large dissertation here, but element B is really sort of our org chart. Element C is workforce development and community, where we reach out into the community to translate not only new approaches, but also important questions of community back to us. Workforce is embracing the development of all of workforce. Element D, our resources, services. Our pilots live in element D. I will be managing element D and Shauna Hudson, element C. Element E is an interesting new approach where we can give something on the order of an R21 in translational science. We have 2 projects currently. These projects will be renewed, and our concept is the pilot programs that you'll be hearing about could actually serve as initial funding for people who can then submit an element ER21, which is about $250,000 for 2 years of funding, allowing people to progress. Now, in parallel with all of those wonderful services, we have a graduate, a T32, and a postdoc T32. These are in the midst of being evaluated for funding. We have a very competitively scored K-12. This is 2 years of funding for new faculty at 75 to 80% of their salary with money for their laboratory. This will be determined by us. And an R25, which is a summer program for MD candidates as well as PharmD candidates in translational science, dedicated to their career development. They interface with the UM1, which is our pilots and elements. Ultimately, we will be applying for RC2 grants, which are grants that fund 3 to 4 years at $500,000. That's determined by NCATS, which is the institute that funds us. So suffice it to say, there's a lot of moving parts with NJX, but a lot of these are devoted to career development. The new modules that we have are the Great Core, which is a genetically inclined research and education core that will offer people state-of-the-art consultations in Mendelian randomization and genetics approaches. We have a hub liaison team that allows you to develop clinical trial studies within the concept of the consortium. Element E is new from the last 5 years, and we have working groups that you could access to help impact your science through consultations, team science, policy management, AI, DEA and IA approaches. The users from NJX is faculty, staff, students, and valued partners. You know, we don't test hypotheses at NJX. We facilitate your science. That's how we get credibility. So the pilot program that we're rolling out today is going to be devoted to translational science. It's not to say we're abandoning translational research, but translational science focuses on a best approach process that applies to any target or disease. These are sort of the flags that NCATS have developed that allows us to take our translational science best process moving forward. This is different than translational research. We have another set of pilot program that will be funding translational research, and Arnold will talk about those extensively. Ultimately, what we're looking to do is to discover, engage practice, and change policy. Some of this will work through dissemination and implementation science. Shauna Hudson is leading that work group, but it also allows you access to privileged linked databases like the electronic health record, omics, and other fee-for-service databases through the Institute for Health. Each of these are focused on finding the best process of going from discovery to practice to policy. We're excited in the next 7 years that a new building will be going up, which will be focused on translational research, 2 full floors. We'll be going into the Helix building, which will be called Rutgers Health Building on Albany. We also have there's space for NJIT in Princeton in this initiative, very exciting, in a new building that's going up. On this campus is also going to be another building that will be a home for industry as we move forward. Now, the NJX administration that manages our program are shown here. I won't be able to call out everyone on this call today. I know Pam is here, Rebecca. These are critical people. They will be intaking your grant. Judy Argon is our special operations person. Mila Dunbar, our executive assistant. My executive assistant. The CTSA administrator, Sandy Burrows, is finance. Bill Jester is also, it helps with the administration and is the chief operating officer for our institute. So in short, that's NJX. I'd like to pass over now for detailed description of this new pilot program. Arnold, I think you'll take it away. Thank you all for joining. So Arnold?
Absolutely. I think you may need to stop sharing.
Yes, I will stop sharing and you can share forthwith. There you go.
Okay, let's see how I do here. Okay, I'll do this by desktop. All righty. Are we there?
Yes, we are. Well
Okay,
done.
very good. Let's see if I can find the pointer as well. Oh, no, automatic, visible. I'm not sure. I'll just use my mouse. They don't have any colors. Okay, so thank you, Ray. It's a very nice introduction to the tremendous scope of NJX and the success that it's had in supporting translational research across our partner institutions. And thank you all for joining us. This is a new adventure for us, really responsive to the NCATS impetus, NCATS initiative to really foster translational science, the process of doing translation. But as Ray said, and I'll point out again later, we are not walking away from translational research. And Grace has been with Sam Wong at Princeton, and Bianca's been very involved, really instrumental and Judy Argon in a wonderfully successful translational research program over the last 5 years, I guess, funding terrific science, mostly more in this category of translational research. And we'll talk a little bit more about the distinctions. Ray talked about it. We're not walking away from that. We have a separate funding stream, and we'll have an RFA later in the year around that as well. We've already introduced Grace and Dr. Jager as well, and Sam Long has been mentioned, co-leads, all of whom really have been instrumental in moving this program along, and we're really delighted to welcome Dr. Jager and to then the partnership of the hospital system as well. Ray introduced you to the program administrative staff. For purposes of really moving these applications along, I want to highlight Pam Dolan, who has been tremendous in sort of, oops, I have a very sensitive mouse that jumps, my apologies, we may go back and forth a bit. Pam is a point of contact and has been instrumental in putting together sort of assembling applications, review processes, moving it along. Judy Argon is our right hand in so many ways in making this all happen. She has the answers to all the questions. Anthony Gonzalez has been instrumental in helping with regulatory issues. So if you're successfully funded, you'll definitely be working with Anthony. And Bianca has been a marvelous liaison with Princeton to make things work there as well. So now specifically about this new program. So the program is designed to enhance, broaden, and bolster NJAC's research endeavors in translational science. We're going to come back to that in a moment. Propel clinical and translational science initiatives throughout NJACs and all of our partners, the 4 partners, and provide resources to nurture projects that will really transform translational research. So what is translational science? And Ray started to talk about it. I'm going to continue, and it may seem like we're sort of overly emphasizing this, but the reason I think that I'm going to spend a lot of time on it is for many of us, this was sort of a new concept. For those of us who've been invested in doing translational research and trying to think about discoveries and getting them into the clinical arena and going from the clinic back into the lab, this is a very different sort of set of projects that we're talking about, and it's taken me a while to begin to get my arms around it. So I'm going to beat on this a little bit now, so my apologies. But then I'm happy to answer questions too. But the idea, again, as Ray began to address, is the idea of translational science is it pioneers scientific and operational breakthroughs to overcome hurdles along the translational research continuum. We're going to see that graphically in a moment. A spectrum of innovations to revolutionize research landscape and to catalyze speedier, more efficient, and more impactful advances in translation. So these are scientific, they're operational, they're regulatory, they're financial, they're administrative, different sorts of approaches to make translational research work better. So translational research then is defined more as the movement of research findings from laboratory to bedside to populations, and sometimes the other way as well. But it's more around specific discovery and specific disease processes, or at least spanning a few related sorts of endeavors. And again, there'll be a separate translational research grant RFA later this year. So these slides are courtesy of Einstein, so we thank them, and the website is listed at the bottom. So we haven't asked permission, but we will ask forgiveness if they ever are concerned, but we'll highlight that we're thanking them. Translational science, again, identifies barriers to the advancement of research across the translational spectrum. So here you see the bottlenecks in progress shown graphically. Works towards a product or an approach that overcomes or mitigates these barriers, and importantly is generalizable across multiple diseases or conditions. Okay, and examples of the bottlenecks, target qualification, sort of generally, how do you identify targets? Predictive efficacy of assays involved in trying to find targets. Predictive toxicology, a very interesting sort of area of trying to understand broadly how one can make predictions about risks and side effects. And then focus on risky and undruggable targets, sort of again generically. Clinical research issues. How do you make data work between different operators and different sites? inconsistent, different kinds of data, inconsistent diagnostic or outcome criteria, how to enhance clinical trial participant recruitment and diversity, clinical trial operational efficiency. And there's been a lot of work on that at NJAX already, and addressing administrative burdens, regulatory burdens. And then clinical implementation, public health, the time of intervention adoption. How long does it take to get this from individual patients more broadly into dissemination and accessibility, implementation, access and adherence of anything, because obviously interventions are no good if you can't get them, and people don't do them, and comparative effectiveness. And again, continuing the theme of some more examples, operationally, ideas early on of sort of adaptive or novel trial designs, later enhancing community and informatics efforts to address low enrollment or diversity in trials, issues in administration and training, administrative burden in startups, processes to streamline this, shortage of personnel, new initiatives in training and career development, and scientifically, insufficient tools or technologies to do this prediction that we talked about. So new kinds of platforms to predict toxicity or efficacy, particularly in settings of rare diseases, where you don't want to do this one at a time. Clinically incompatible databases, which obviously is an extraordinary problem. And how do you look at harmonization? Sorry again. And additional examples that we've really sort of worked through. Sam, who's not here, helped us really address some of these. Developing advanced computational models, machine learning algorithms to improve prediction of efficiency, drug efficacy and toxicity based on preclinical data. Reducing the need for animal testing, for example. Designing novel in vitro assays using human-derived cells or organoids. I am so sorry, it's going to keep doing this. I'm just too sensitive here. To better model disease disease mechanisms, and evaluate therapies. Again, developing platforms to improve translation of preclinical to clinical. Developing harmonized and standardized data collection and interoperable platforms to integrate clinical data sets from multiple sources, enable better sharing and analysis. And another example, designing novel imaging and electrophysiologic techniques characterizing brain connectivity and neural circuit dysfunctions in autism and other neuropsychiatric disorders. Again, we're not, this should not be disease specific, with the aim of identifying reliable biomarkers for early diagnosis or monitoring of response. So what are these projects going to be? And this is very much specified by NCATS and the grant that was awarded. These are $40,000 a year per project for research that seeks to answer the question, how do we improve the processes? Again, emphasis on processes to facilitate and support research, again, overcoming bottlenecks. Testing 2 or more approaches to solve a challenge or a bottleneck, a problem. Is hypothesis driven, identifies a roadblock again and then looks for ways to solve it, and demonstrates relevance for others doing research, again, not specific to a single disease or single area. So the themes should focus on approaches and processes, again, and be disease agnostic. So these are the themes that I'm talking about too. And then align with one of the following sorts of themes, and these are outlined in the RFA pretty carefully, okay, with lots of sub-bullet points. Creating efficiencies by integrating knowledge, creating partnerships, and working across diseases. Expanding patient and community engagement. Another theme, exploring bold scientific approaches, themes around training and organization or an organizational environment. So again, approaches and processes, disease agnostic, and aligning with one of these themes. Examples of these themes are given in the RFA, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on them, and you can read them there. But again, common bottlenecks and roadblocks across multiple kinds of projects or initiatives. Solutions for challenges that, again, are across different diseases. Cross-sectoral partnerships, crossing government, universities, industry, et cetera, to leverage expertise. integrating knowledge. So concepts, theories, methods, approaches, different disciplines, scientific efficiencies. I am sorry. Scientific efficiencies. So innovations in approaches, methods, technologies, collaboration efficiencies. So how do you enhance the speed of collaborations in teams? And then project management efficiency. So that's one theme. Another is expanding patient community engagement, clearly very important, and that some of you will fit into this subset, developing and testing new and innovative ways to impact patients, communities, organizations as collaborators, implementing evidence-informed practices for patient and community engaged research. So an example might be testing novel recruitment strategies, or testing different modes of patient communication, looking at what's more effective, so comparing different approaches. Bold scientific approaches, new goals, ambitious research goals that could produce major advances or paradigm shifts, again, in how one does translational research. Integrating new ways of integrating diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility into developing research resources. Research priority setting, how to set priorities in research, including diverse perspectives in priority setting. So partnerships with different collaborators, research investments, then in representing input and diverse population and patient health needs. Research design, implementation, data analysis, so innovative questions and how to implement innovations in methods. Research process and structures, how to develop and implement innovations in team interactions. Training and education, so new ways of training mechanisms across translational research and new modules for components of the research workforce in translation. Novel training and rigor and reproducibility. New approaches to regulatory knowledge and compliance across the spectrum of clinical translational research. So pretty broad areas, but you get a sense of the themes and what they're really directed at. Again, a $40,000 single project. Now, the first year is a little tough because of the nature of the award of the grant and the timing. We're looking for projects that can be done in a 6 to 9 month duration. The start date would depend on regulatory review approval. So and NCATS approval. So everything has to go through NCATS. And unfortunately, as we've struggled with for several years now, carryover of funding is prohibited. There are no cost extensions. In the future years, this will be up to 12 months. But this time, hopefully, there's some really discrete process-related projects that could be done in this period that might be sort of IRB ready. If you've got something ready to roll or something that you could turn around quite quickly, that will help as well. Interrupt me with questions as you go along, please. I certainly may not have all the answers, but I would defer to other people as well, and we can also seek them out. The PI, co-PI eligibility, well, obviously being well suited to the project and having the effort and having experience in training, ongoing record of accomplishments in your own fields. If it's collaborative, the investigator should have a complementary and integrated expertise. They have to be, PIs must have a primary affiliation with the partners. And now we really have all 4 sets of partners here, Rutgers, Princeton, NJIT, and RWJ Barnabas Health, with a faculty or equivalent position. But note that postdocs, residents, clinical fellows may serve as co-investigators now. And this is a change that's very important to enhance the training aspect too, provided the mentors are from these affiliates. And PIs, co-PIs are limited to 1 application per cycle, with an important exception being that clinicians who have specific expertise or patient populations and that may be relevant to more than 1 proposal can be a part of more than 1 proposal. I mean, if someone really has access, if there's several proposals that have to look at how you implement, I'll just pull something out, implement new translational research in the emergency room. Clearly, you may need to go to the same sort of people in emergency departments across the system, or so there may be an exception there, and we can address that if people have questions. I'm not going to monitor the chat because I'm busy talking. So if someone either interrupts me
I'll
or
handle that. I'll be able to help out.
Perfect, great, thanks. So I just noticed there's something in the chat, but we can talk later about that at the end. So application process. So a letter of intent is required. Now, we've said that the due date is May 17th. We are fully cognizant that that is 4 days from now, and or 3 days. I suspect that that you will receive an email that extends that a little bit, not long. So if you want to do this, be working on it now, because we can't, given the NCATS award and the timing, we can't extend this for weeks. I mean, we may be able to add a few days, a weekend or a few days to this, and we'll try to get that out shortly. And I'm probably giving Judy and the others a heart attack when I say this now, because we haven't talked about it. But 4 days is a little short from this webinar. But I suspect we'll be able to make sure that you have a weekend to think about this as well. So we'll get in touch with you about, we will send out to everyone about that. Contact us if you're very serious about applying. The LOI form is at REDCap. It's here, and I think on the application as well. And there's some specifics you fill in with draft abstract, draft specific aims. Now, this is not a contract, the LOI. This is what you're thinking. It should be, representative of the areas you're thinking. Again, there's going to be no evaluation of this in terms of quality of research, but the point of it is to ensure the match between the RFA and the project. So we don't want you writing a full grant if in our determination it's not translation science, but it's really translational research. It's too much to ask, that's so get a read. Is it really, is your thoughts around translational research, really being met? Assess competitiveness, though again, we're not scoring, but if clearly people don't have PIs that fit the criteria, et cetera. And also then to allow the co-leads to begin to think about who would be reviewers for the project when it's submitted. Because that is actually, we're on a tight time frame here again because of NCATS, and actually the longest sort of part of the review process for us over 4 years has been identifying and getting agreement for review from reviewers, because we think it's obviously important to have really outstanding reviewers. Institutional sign-off not required for the letter of intent. Again, if we push back a few days, the due date for the letter of intent, we will also have to push back a few days, the notification, but it won't, both of these again will not be pushed back much. So don't wait. If you're thinking about this, don't wait to start working on your LOI. Hopefully you've already been working on it because the RFA has been out for a little bit now. Application components, I won't go over. But they're, because they're listed in the RFA, but some good news, we're not interested in a long application. And again, I thank my co-leads for this, but we think that for this kind of an application, you should be able to make the points about what's going to be done and why it's novel within a 3-page application. So that can either be greeted with a sigh of relief or with panic, because 3 pages is harder to write in some ways than 6 or than 12. But on the other hand, it will make it easy. It will make it will make it important, essential to focus on what the key points are in translational science, what the key points are about how you're proposing to make something better to address a bottleneck. And then a piece that talks about thoughts about independent funding. And this is looked at review, I can assure you. So this is not just a throwaway. And then a project timeline, again, important because these are such short grants. Then you would have references, a small resource environment, other support information, the budget, and biosketch and letters of support if appropriate and helpful. Again, this is all for the application, not for the LOI, right? The LOI is the short, what are you going to do, and does it make sense, what, why, and does it make sense as a translational project, science project. Again, the application is due the 14th. Again, there may be a few days that we play with this. based on how we shift the timing. But again, I would not assume that this is going to be lengthened by weeks. Absolutely not. Because again, we've got to get this going because of the timeline. For the review, there'll be a very quick administrative review to make sure, again, really like the LOI, that it hits the marks that were needed to submit. There is an initial review of reviewers that we will select from expertise from the sort of Academy of Mentors, the folks who are really involved with NJ Acts, from previous awardees, and potentially from prominent scientists in the field outside of the institution, either across our 4 institutions who may not be as active in NJ Acts, so they wouldn't be in the Mentors Academy, but they would have expertise, or potentially from outside of the institution if it really is a unique area. After these initial written reviews, there'll be a review by a primary review committee of leadership of NJ Acts that spans fields that are important, that have come up in the grant applications themselves, and then a final review, and so that they will be able to look at the reviews received from outside and evaluate whether in the scores and the reviews really match and make sense, and how this fits sort of again in the translational science portfolio. And then a final review and funding decision by the executive committee of the co-leads from the alliance partners, together with the senior leadership of NJ Acts, that will also focus on, again, translational science and in value in sort of forming a portfolio here. Review criteria, impact, use, how the resources will be used. Are they fitting the needs of NJ Acts and of the CTSA? Collaboration building potential, potential to generate high quality reproducible findings, which then of course could be turned into publications and ultimately NIH funding. And we would hope at adoption of outcomes by the health system in making all of these pieces work better as we do translational science and translational research. Excellence of the science goes without question as a review criterion. Here again, it would be potential for translation, but more specifically, potential for fulfilling a translational science goal, improving translation, likelihood of success, and we'd love to see use of data from across the system. And again, we have now a member of the system helping us with this. We don't need to go through what the form will look like. Institutional sign-off not required for the letter of intent. Required for applications. The RFA has details. It varies from institution to institution. Rutgers does not equal Princeton, does not equal NJIT in terms of what's needed here. Sorry. And if collaborating across the affiliates, there'll have to be a separate budget for each of the pieces, and sign off as needed would be required. We will work as hard as we can for this to be completed by the end of the summer, hopefully much earlier because of the timeline here. We would like people to have 9 months to be able to do these. That is the goal. Again, we're talking about 6 to 9 months projects, but we will do everything we can to turn things around in the summer. And the actual start date and release of funds depends on what goes on with the human subjects piece. So in particular for animals, subjects, for the regulatory pieces, because that has to be approved, and NCATS has to look at that as well. So again, we're looking at 6 to 9 months in this first year, so they need to be tight projects. Again, the actual amount, be it 6 or 9, in some sense may depend on these approvals. And again, we're not allowed by NCATS, the nature of the CTSA, to do non-competing extensions. And God, I wish we could. The amount of time we spend praying for that. Only a few just summaries to end from differences. Again, this is a different RFA, under the guidelines of the new CTSA grant, translational science. One funding category of this amount. We talked about postdocs now eligible as co-PIs along with residents and fellows, clinical fellows, and we talked about the limitations on the PIs and the shortening of the proposal. So I think, so the questions of, does the project fit the RFA? I think we would be happy to look at this, and we can even consult with others in leadership as well about whether it fits the RFA and whether it is translational science. The RFA had a list of ways to identify potential co-PIs, and potentially some of us at some of the institutions could as well. And you could email NJAX for questions about budget, subcontracts, approvals, etc. We're all here to help, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Well done, Arnold. Thank you so much, and thanks for taking down the slides. So I'd like to just make a couple comments here. $40,000 doesn't go far, and we get that. However, view this as seed money with a deliverable or milestone that Arnold so eloquently described in studying of a process. Now, when we talk about that, often we're thinking of disease agnostic approaches so that, you could develop a process that could be applicable not only to your favorite disease, maybe as a model, but to other diseases so that you are effectively changing the throughput. Keep that in mind. That's what NCATS wanted these projects to have the capability. Think of the health system as the sandbox to be able to do the work. Because if Joe Yeager takes this to his C-suite and says, look, this project shows that we could improve outcomes, then you could almost have an immediate effect on the health system, which would be a value added, a value proposition for your grant. Now, that's fundamentally different than you then applying for an R01. We get that. But it would allow you to get seed money to show feasibility that then could become an Element E project at $250,000 per year for 2 years to further develop this approach that could lead one to an R01 ultimately. Our goal here is to study process, to study methods that allows us to move things through the health system or through our own approaches to discovery to improve outcomes. So, this sits somewhere between CQI, continuous quality improvement. That's something that's dissemination and implementation science, and is really quite exciting because discovery here could move things forward. So again, think of this as seed money for a very defined outcome that will then be either applied towards an Element E project or through a PCORI grant. That would be an ideal sort of an approach that could move forward. Trainees with mentorship. Remember, it's all about showing that you have the tools to accomplish the work. So you as a trainee are not probably going to be competitive unless the mentor, leans into you to allow you to move forward to get the project done. So those are some of the guardrails that I want to highlight in this new endeavor. This is brand new. Right off of the Institute who wanted this to occur, that will have more immediate effect on patient care, equity, health equity, and so forth. So I'll stop, and hopefully Arnold and Grace, that amplified some of the important points you had raised.
I want to add a point from the chat that Anthony Gonzalez put in, which is important for you all to know. To add, all funds need to be spent during that 6 to 9 month period. It's not, but you don't have to stop the research if there's a way to continue analyzing the data. For example, afterwards, there are people to do it, or you're doing it yourself, etc. The research may continue past the end date. I want to make sort of address another point that Ray just brought up, and maybe Ray or others would want to comment on it. I think the idea of, potentially, you work on a disease, and you're trying to address a problem that is more general, but your patient population or your population that you're looking at is that disease. I think that fits as long as I would try to make sure that when you're putting in the LOI, that you highlight that this is more generalizable, so it doesn't come across as you're just, trying to do a new syringe to give insulin. If it's a new syringe that will work for any injectable that's periodic, like GLP-1, then, just highlight the generality of that. I'm not sure we did a really great job on that as I think about it in the RFA itself. But I think in the LOI, and we should maybe when we extend the the LOI, if we extend the dates in the email, we can just point out again the definition of translational science and maybe sort of make that point that in the LOI, try to show how it is more, not just disease agnostic.
Yeah, I think, Arnold, what you raised is very important, Arnold, that, you can use any disease as an example, but it's the study of the process and the methods that's more important than potentially the cure on the back end. That's not what this would be about, curing one disease with a very novel approach. It's how do I study the process? The other thing I do want to mention is, Anthony, unlike every other grant that you've ever submitted, when you submit it and you do the regulatory component, you feel like you have the entire planet on your shoulders as you're trying to get it over the IRB. Anthony Gonzalez is your go-to person. He actually will walk you through and aid in the IRB submission and will work with you to get this done quickly without hitches. His job is to make the regulatory component far less onerous, because you're thinking, oh my God, I got to get an IRB through and do all the work in this short period of time. No way, no how I can do it. But Anthony is well-versed in being able to chaperone the proposal through the IRB and through NCATS to get it stood up as fast as possible.
So that just raises a sort of funny point. An example of translational science would be doing this with or without Anthony. Anthony gets you through the roadblocks.
And I can assure you there'll be a lot of people on the ledge that we have to talk off the ledge, Arnold, if there's no Anthony.
He's done a terrific job, so.
Questions? Anything's fair game. Can't believe it's that clear, Jaeger. Did it sound that clear to you?
Well, I was just completely distracted by Arnold's mouse. I think that's right for a study. All kidding aside, I thought it was. I would love to hear any questions people have. If we don't leave here with a question that I can't answer, then I'll be surprised.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
So Elisa calling from NGIT. So I just wanted to ask, are co-PIs necessary, or like can a single PI apply for this?
A single PI can apply. If you are a trainee, though, you must have a mentor and a co-I who will be responsible for you, administering the grant. So if you are faculty, you do not need to have a co-I. You do not need to have partners in the alliances. If, on the other hand, you find that, gee, I would like to work with somebody in the health system to be able to access the clinical research data warehouse, then that would be something that we obviously would like to reach across the aisle and have somebody from the health system help you. But if you are self-contained, as an example, using your own data, go for it.
Okay, well, thank you.
That's fundamentally different than the last 5 years where we compelled people to have partners. This one, you can be a golfer or tennis player, not doubles, and submit.
I have a question about the improving methodologies. I think it was in one of your slides. For biomedical scientists, can you give us a couple of examples of how you can see the translational science as opposed to translational research?
Yeah, so typically, Raymond, typically we think of hypothesis testing, right? If you're writing a proposal, what's your hypothesis? In this case, the hypothesis could be methods A and methods B are going to be explored for outcome D. And outcome D could be the uptick of a particular approach by the health system, or the development of a new software that could be utilized to improve patient care or patient access. But you're going to test that through methods A and B and compare which one of these will yield the outcome faster. So it's really a methods approach, and the hypothesis is that, you know, methods A is going to be better than methods B.
Mhm.
But that, I don't know if that gave clarity. I think Arnold gave a couple examples also that, and we can make these slides available to everyone if
Should do
we're
that.
happy to do that.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
So two questions actually. So 6 to 9 months, as you know, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be on camera, but I think my camera's having issues here.
That's okay. I love the art though.
Thank you, thank you. So two questions. 6 to 9 months is a relatively short period of time, especially when you're trying to make an impact on health outcomes. So is the goal to sort of anecdotally say that within 6 to 9 months we've seen this trend in impact at the end of 6 to 9 months, or what?
Yeah,
Is it-
I think, yes, you know, you're absolutely right. We recognize this as a very short leash to be able to power a study that'll have a definitive answer. However, if it's a compelling argument to improve the process, and you do get trends or arithmetic means that aren't necessarily statistically significant, but are compelling, that would allow you then to apply for other funding or for element E to expand this into a 3-year, $250,000 project to really test the outcome. So, you know, we all recognize, and the review committee will recognize the limitations to the work plan that could be done in this time. We're not naive. We're all scientists, right? So I think what we're looking for is there a gee whiz? Is there a trend in a direction that has a value proposition that's compelling? And, you know, you're going to, you know, if I was applying for this and I had a grant that maybe didn't get funding, but I'm very excited about the project, I've generated preliminary data, then that could get dropped in and show that, gee, this is what we've done. This is my history, and we want to expand this in a novel way. This is a very short, you know, and quick application that could have value for you in your career development.
Gotcha. Thank you. And my second question is, are you looking for it to specifically be a disease per se? So for example, if our program shares or creates sense of belonging and health protective factors against certain diseases in population-based communities or in marginalized communities, because of what the data is saying that this is what we need. And it's not like we can see a downtick in diabetes, or we can see, you know, a decrease in a particular disease vector. Is that still applicable? Aren't we in?
Yeah, I think that would be applicable. I think what we would be looking for then is some read in the community that your intervention had impact. Let's define impact. Impact would be maybe knowledge, maybe understanding, maybe willingness of the marginalized community to embrace a new approach that could improve outcome. You see what I'm saying? You're not definitively showing it. You know, one of the best examples, and I would have you guys go on our website and put in NJ Heroes 2. This was a project done by Shauna Hudson during COVID that compared the use of community-based organizations in enhancing marginalized communities and diverse communities in getting COVID testing using community-based organizations versus healthcare providers who were embedded in their community. So they were ambassadors going out. Guess what? She definitively showed, now this was a very large scope, that going with community-based organizations was far more effective than even having zealots and ambassadors who are healthcare providers talk to the community. Why? Well, because the CBOs have trust and they have the ability to contact more people than an ambassador can do one-on-one with a handshake. So this actually became an example across all of the consortium as a way to do sort of methods A, methods B testing, and with the outcome of COVID testing. So that's just an example. Shauna Hudson did a beautiful job. Out of that project came 6 or 7 publications. You can read about sort of the philosophy behind it, but it was true D&I science with the ultimate goal of taking vulnerable populations and having them embrace COVID testing. So,
Thank you.
yep. And I think, Pam, did you put that in the chat? Yep, there you go. Heroes 2, it's in the chat. You can take a peek at it. That's a beautiful example of D&I science. Much more extensive. She didn't do that for $40,000, okay? She did it more for $3 million, but the example is the example, and we would look for a very more focused scope.
Okay.
You know, Yi Chen is on, and she's looking at Fair AI and how AI can be impactful in diversity. And, you know, there could be a project around how do we examine AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, natural language processing in a equity manner, rather than having it biased, either implicit or explicit bias. I think that would be a great project that could be rolled out. So keep that in mind.
Thank you, Ray. Yeah, I was thinking of that, but I don't know if I can manage the time, but thank you.
No, I know. Well, it's I just used you as an example, Yi.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. Thank you.
Good. All right. Other questions? Well, all right.
One other
Well,
question.
everyone, wish you the best. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
One other question.
Is
Just
that-
to confirm that this is for New Jersey populations only? And is there any opportunity to sort of blend work that's going on in another state with this?
We would welcome applications that it doesn't have to be New Jersey centric. I mean, obviously the investigator has to be part of the alliance, one of the institutions, but if you're doing things outside of the state and that could be used to come back to the state, that would be wonderful. The other opportunity, Chazelle, is if, I don't know with whom you might be considering working with, but if they also have a CTSA hub, like we do, and they're working with a hub, that would be very positively viewed, because what we're building is new collaborations hub to hub. There's 60 across the country, and we would welcome projects that would be working closely with another hub and bring that into our pilots.
Wonderful. Just remind me, what's the CTSA stand for? I can look it up.
It's the Clinical Translational Science Award. And that's, if you go on our website, it'll describe what we are as one of 60 across the country. We're the only one in New Jersey. There's one in Philadelphia, 4 in Manhattan, 1 in Hershey in our, immediate catchment area.
It might be. The professor might be. I'll look that up. Great.
Yeah, well, that would be a real plus. That would be advantageous.
Awesome.
Good.
I just put a link to NCATS and the description of the CTSA in the chat.
Yep,
You want to copy it out?
yep. If you want to copy that, probably more than you'd ever want to read about it. But
Got it.
all right, everyone, I know I speak for the entire team, our code leads. We're all here to help you move forward. And if there's any time you feel flustered, confused, please reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. So I want to thank you all. Arnold, you want to close things out, and Grace?
Just thank you all again, and we look forward to applications, and we will help in any way that we can, just as Ray said.
All right, drivers, start your engines. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.